back for episode number 146 of the weekly playback. So my bangs are already starting to bother me, but we'll see how that goes throughout the video. So if you see me touching them or keep on pushing them away, apologies for that, but they're starting to get a little bit too long already. So anyway, I played one big game and then a couple smaller ones, so let's just get started. Let's talk about Pax Viking. This is a 2021 game for 1 to 6 players, designed by Yoon Manker, and the art is done by Madeline Fial, and it's published by Ion Game Design. And this is a review copy, which I received from Ion. So in this game, you are basically trying to take control of different areas. It's an area control influence kind of game with movement and hand management. So I'll just read the description and then we can talk about how it plays. So it says, in Pax Viking, you represent a Jarl, or is it Jarl? A powerful leader in the Norse culture whose family has grown strong over the course of centuries. It is now a pivotal point in history and an opportunity to unite many Jarldoms into a unified country. Using a trade network in the east, powerful allies in the west, and smart tactics, you may prevail as the first monarch of Sweden. So the board is really big, so I'm not gonna try to hold it up, but basically I'll throw up a picture, but you'll see different areas of the board, and the different areas represent like the north, the south, the east, and the west. And you, on your turn, are basically, you know, going to be moving your longboats. You're going to be trying to take control of different areas, and yeah, and just establish dominance, basically. So I'll just show you some of the basic components. So each person is going to have 6 longboats in their own player color. I didn't have a chance to separate them out into bags yet, but here are all the different player colors, plus some neutral colors, which are associated only with certain areas, which if you take control of, you would get extra ships to use, basically. And then like here are just a bunch of other player components in the different colors that you can see. So you're going to have basically a bunch of different kinds of followers. So the different kinds are, you have, so yeah, you'll have 6 followers of different types. So you have like your Jarldom followers, you've got like your Theocracy followers, there's 4 different types, but you'll have 6 of each type. So you have Jarldom followers, Theocracy followers, Sweden followers, and Rus followers, and each person will have 6 long ships. And then you have action markers, which just kind of help you keep track of your actions, because in each turn you get 4 actions to do, and you can do the same action twice, but the little action markers just kind of help you keep track of that. And then you're going to have a bunch of cards, and you're not even going to be using all of the cards in a game. So I played a 3-player game of this, and in a 3-player game, I think you only use like 30 some cards. So you're going to create a deck based on the number of players. And on the side of the board, you're basically going to see a market from which you can buy cards. And one of the ways in which a game end can be triggered is if all the cards are taken. Which might come sooner than you think, because in this game, though all the cards on the side of the board have a cost associated with them, if you can't afford a card, you can just draw blindly from the deck, but then that removes the bottommost card from the market. So let's just talk about what you're doing. So basically, again, you're just trying to take control of different areas. But before we go into that, let's just talk about the game end triggers, because there are these kinds of objective cards which you will be trying to achieve, goal cards, and if at any point someone plays an event card, you'll check to see if any of the players have completed one of the goal cards, and if they have, then they would win immediately at that point in time. So that is one of the ways in which the game can end. So there's going to be 4 different goal cards at the top of the board, and they have different difficulty levels. So in the game I played, I think we had 3 standards and 1 advanced, if I remember correctly, and I actually ended up winning by completing one of the goals and triggering an event so that we could actually check to see you know, if one of these have been completed, and I did manage to complete one and I won. So that is one of the ways in which a game can end. Yeah, I don't remember the other way. The other way, I believe, is if all the cards run out, then you just check to see who has like the most followers or the most points. Let's see. Oh yeah, so it says one of the conditions is when the last saga tile, so these are called tiles, When the last saga tile from the saga track is taken at such time that the saga pile and the saga track are empty, then the game ends. If no player fulfills a victory condition at that time, then use the tiebreaker to determine the winner. So the tiebreaker, in the case of more than one player fulfilling victory conditions, or if no one fulfills any when the saga track runs out, compare the tied players as follow. The player with the most established follower wins, and then if there's still a tie, then the player with the most remaining silver among those who tied for most established followers wins, and if there's still a tie, then the players share the victory, the crown, and an unusual historical reference to a time when more than one monarch ruled together. So yeah, so that's how you are going to win the game. So either when someone triggers an event where you'll check to see if one of these goal cards is met by a player, or when the saga deck is empty and there's no cards left, or these tiles rather. So basically you're going to have a player board, and this is kind of similar to Vendel to Viking, and on this player board you'll see different areas where you might be able to place cards. So you might be able to place a god card and then a couple advocates, and here you'll see your special ability and then all the different actions available to you. So on your turn you have 4 actions that you can use, action points I'll call them. So one of the action points is to invest. You can draw a card from the top of the saga deck, in which case you would remove the bottommost card from that column of cards. And you can hold up to 4 cards in hand, I believe, at a time. So that's one action, is invest. Another action is to journey. You can move a ship up to 3 steps, and then you have to exhaust that ship once you reach like a certain location, and then you may trade with co-located rival during any step. So that's the journey action. You can play, so if a requirement is met, you can resolve an event, or replace or place and establish one of these cards, like a venture card, for example. So if I had a venture card, the ones that you can place in different areas, if you are in that area with a ship, then you can place this. So then you would be able to do that, and then also establish by placing one of your matching markers on this spot. And then another action is to activate. So if your ship and a follower are on a venture card, you can perform the ability and then exhaust your ship. And then there's parlay. So this is if alone, you can establish. So if you are alone somewhere, you can establish by placing one of your follower tokens on that circle, or you can challenge. So when you challenge, you're going to compare the number of ships to the person who already has control of that area. And then if you win, then you can hopefully establish. So those are like the main actions, and you will be doing 4 actions on your turn, and you can do more. You can do the same action 3 times even if you wanted to, for example, or 4 times. Like journey, you could just journey with different ships for 4 times if you wanted to. So you're going around and around doing that basically. But basically this game is like kind of like an engine builder, in which you want the different cards, these tiles that you're playing, to kind of work together. And if you end up getting like an advocate tile, so there's, in this game, there's these people who can be advocates, like this one, for example. So you would need to be in this area in order to play this to your board on an advocate spot, but then it's going to give you a special ability. So you want your advocates to work together with the areas which you're controlling or hoping to control, so that you can kind of get a little bit of an engine going that will help you to hopefully gain victory and succeed in this game. There's also special cards of these types, which are god cards. So let me see if I can find a god one to show you. So I had a god card. I had Thor, I believe, if I remember correctly, played on my board, and I cannot find any god cards right now. Let's see. Well, here's one, for example. Here's a god card. So this one would say, like, after winning a challenge, return 2 of your rivals' ships instead of 1. So that can be very beneficial. So yeah, so just a bunch of different kinds of god cards as well. And again, in order to play a god card to your board, you would also need to be in the area that is indicated on this card. And then I'll show you some examples of event cards. So here is an event card, for example. So if you manage to get this from the saga, track, or deck, then you can play it on your turn if you wanted to. So you would have to, again, be in the location indicated here. And this one says all discard 1 of their established theocracy advocates. So you would play the event and then you would check to see if anyone has met any of these goal cards, to see if anyone has immediately won the game. But that is essentially the game. So essentially it's just, you know, collecting a bunch of these cards and hopefully playing them in the right locations at the right time, establishing yourself in different regions, trying to meet one of these goals. So let me just show you some examples of different goal cards. So let's look at a novice one. So this one says all of your theocracy followers are established. So that means you would have all of your followers, and again, each player has 6 of each type. You would have all of your followers of this type out on the board in various locations. So that is one of those. Here's another one that says you have more followers established of every type than any other rival. So if you manage to complete this at the time an event card was resolved, then you would win. But you would also check to make sure that no one else has completed one of these, because if they have, then you have a tie, and then you go to the tiebreaker conditions instead. So I'll just talk a little bit about my victory. So I wanted to have control of Persia, and just because I just wanted to like stay in control of that tiny little area. But well, first I'll talk about my play. So my play in the beginning was a little bit more difficult because I felt like it was hard based on the cards that we're showing to really get going until like at least 3 turns passed. But basically my first, like, I think 3 turns, I was just basically moving ships and getting them into position based on which of these cards I saw in the saga track. And then I started putting, like, you know, out my, it was also kind of hard to get money. So that was one thing. So it was just kind of like, oh, one of the ways in which you get money is at the end of your turn, you're going to see how many followers you have out. And if you have, for each type of follower you have out on the board, you will get 1 coin. So, but you need to be able to put them out, which is the establish action. And some of them cost money to do that to begin with. So it was just kind of a little bit difficult for me to get ramped up. But once I got control of one area, that worked really well with one of the goal cards, because the goal card said I needed to have my Sweden type followers out in 3 locations in order to win, and I was able to secure that by taking control of Persia. I had control of Persia, and then someone kind of, no, actually, did I have control? I can't remember if I had control, but someone kind of kicked me out of there, and then I regained control. But it was kind of like, in this game, people are just undoing what you've done, and then you have to spend a turn to undo what they've done, and then it's just, you know, that's the way a lot of games work. I get that, but it was just kind of like having to do that and then pray that no one would mess you up again, so that on your next turn you could play an event, because you only have 4 actions. So after undoing stuff that people have done, you might not have any actions available to then achieve your victory. But yeah, it is like a fun strategic game in which you have to strategize and think about, you know, the best way to achieve your goals and hopefully win. So I enjoyed it. And it also comes with these player aids, which are really nice, that have all the terms on them and everything. So there's 2 of these. There's also an appendix book, so that's very helpful. Yeah. So again, this is part of like the Viking series, and I believe Vandal to Viking represents the time period before Pax Viking, but was designed after Pax Viking. But if you've played that game and you enjoy that, then I think you would definitely enjoy this game. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you should definitely check it out. So yeah, so that was Pax Viking, and thank you again to Ion Game Design for sending me a review copy of this game. So let's move on. So I received 3 small box games from this new publisher called Gamehead. So the 3 small games I received are Venture Angels, Corgi Pileup, and First Class Letters. So I'm going to talk about them from my favorite to my least favorite of the 3. So let's talk about Venture Angels first. So let me just pull up the information so I can do that. So Venture Angels is originally a 2018 game, but this edition, I believe, is a 2025 game, and it's published by Gamehead. And this game is designed by Bruno Feduti, and the art is done by Ian O'Toole, and it is for 3 to 5 players. And this is a bluffing and kind of bidding, auction bidding game. So in this game, which is played over 3 rounds, you are going to have a certain number of these venture tiles laid out, and you'll see a value on each tile. So the value of this tile, for example, is 5. And there's 3 different colors of venture tiles. There's green, blue, and orange. So you're going to be placing out tiles, and you have to meet the minimum total of the value of the tiles based on the player count. So I played a 4-player game of this, and in the 4-player game, the tiles have to have a total of at least 36 before you actually start playing. So in a round, first you're going to shuffle all of these, and then one by one you're going to reveal tiles until the total value is 36 or greater. So once that happens, then you can actually start playing for that round. So each person has bidding tokens. So I'm just going to show you what some of the bidding tokens look like. And on these tokens, you are going to see the bidding numbers. So you will have 1, 2, you will have 1, 4, and then you will have 2 3s and a 0. So these are your bidding tokens, which of course you're going to bid upside down so other people don't know what you're bidding. So starting with the first player, and in the beginning, when you start the game, the oldest person goes first. So they will place a bidding token underneath one of the venture tiles that you are bidding on. And then you'll keep on going around and around in the first round until everyone has placed all of their bidding tokens. Then you will reveal all of them and see which of these ventures succeeds, which of them flops, and which of them are overhyped. So if any venture has a total bid underneath them that is that does not meet the value at least that is indicated on that tile, then that venture flops and that tile goes away. So if the total bids underneath this tile totaled 5, this would be a flop, and this tile would go away and no one would win it. After you check for flops, then you're going to see which tile underneath them has the highest total. If one of them has a higher total than the rest, then that one goes away as well because that one is overhyped. However, if 2 ventures are tied for the highest total, then they both succeed. So after checking for flops, you're going to check and see if any of the ventures are overhyped. And then you have your succeeding ventures. And then of course, whoever has the highest total underneath a succeeding venture is going to win that venture tile and place it in front of them. If there is a tie for bids underneath that venture tile, then whoever bid earliest on that would win. So the order of your bid tokens underneath the tiles matters because you do have to check for ties in that way. So that is one round. Then in the second round, for each number of tile, for each tile you have in front of you, you will have to place that many bids face up when you are bidding. So in the second round, suppose I had 2 tiles in front of me that I had previously won, then 2 of my bid tokens will need to be placed face up. So that's kind of like a catch-up mechanic for those who have fewer ventures to invest in that, you know, that they've won. So it's kind of a good way for them to catch up because you can kind of see what people are going after. So that's going to happen in the second round. And then in the third round, the person who is farthest behind will get an extra bid token, which they'll get to use after everyone has bid. So in the third round, similarly, you're going to end up placing certain bid tokens face up, depending on how many you have in front of you. Then game end. So the game ends after 3 rounds, and then you're going to figure out your score. So in this game, you want to diversify your portfolio. So basically, you are venture capitalists, you are investing in different ventures, and as a real life venture capitalist, you want to diversify. So what you're going to do is you are going to, for example, for each color you have, see which one of those has the higher value. So you're going to take that number and then add 1 for each additional tile of that color. So if I had 2 blue tiles in front of me, which were these, I would get 7 plus 1 point, which would be 8 points for my blue tiles. And you're going to do that for each color. So if I had a 9 and an 8 and an orange, then I would have 9 plus 1, which would be 10 points for my oranges. So you definitely want to diversify, and then whoever has the most points at the end will win. So that is this game, Venture Angels. So it's a really quick bidding game, and I really enjoyed it. It was just a really easy game to play while eating, which is exactly what we were doing. Like, we played it in a restaurant while eating some food, and it didn't take up too much space, and it's not like a game where you have to worry about, you know, getting cards greasy and stuff like that, because it's just a bunch of tiles and a bunch of cardboard bidding tokens, and I really enjoyed it, and I really like the artwork and some of the fun ventures that you are bidding on. So like one of them is computers for cats, which I really liked. So it's just fun to read the different things that you're bidding on and see the cool artwork as well. Yeah, Alien Contact. So yeah, so that is Venture Angels. And again, this plays up to 5 people, so 3 to 5 people, and it's a really quick, like kind of filler bidding game. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you should definitely check it out. And this was a review copy from Gamehead. So now let's talk about another one of their games. So now let's talk, well, let me put this away first. So yeah. So another one of their games I played is First Class Letters, which I enjoyed. So that is a roll and write word game. So in First Class Letters, I probably should read who the designer is. So this is designed by Peter C. Hayward, and the art is done by, well, I guess I'll have to look it up because I don't see it on the box. Okay. So First Class Letters is a 2025 game for 1 to 100 players designed by Peter C. Hayward, and the art is done by Mickey Blanco, and it's published by Gamehead Games. So in this game, you have these dice, which you are going to be rolling, and then you'll have this like kind of like a mail truck, and on this mail truck will go one of the dice each round that you are not going to be allowed to use, but I'll get into the rules in a little bit. So first you're going to roll at the beginning of the game all the dice, and then you're going to write the 3 letters that come up in alphabetical order in these 3 special boxes that you see. So I'll just show my sheet as an example. So in my game, we rolled an H, a J, and an M. So those were the 3 letters that went into the special boxes. Then each round, you're going to roll all of these dice, and you are trying to create words, and the words have to be in alphabetical order on this sheet. And you're trying to use all of the letters, but you do not want to use this one. So this is like the forbidden letter. So this is going to go here as a reminder that this is, when you form a word, you do not want to use this letter. But of course you can use letters that are not shown. So, the 3 letters that do come up, you want to try to use those 3 letters, because that will earn you more points. But you can also use additional letters as long as it's not this one. So for example, let's suppose I rolled, I'm trying to remember what letters came up. So I think it was an H and a P and an N at one point, which came up. So at one point we had an H, a P, and an N, and I think the forbidden letter was maybe an O, if I remember correctly. So I had to come up with a letter that would use as many of these as possible to get me the most points. So for each letter you use from the 3 blocks that come up, you will get 1 check mark. So if I use the H twice, I would get 2 check marks then for the H. But if I used like the P twice, then I would get 2 check marks for the P. So when these letters came up, I came up with the word happening. So I had 1 H, 2 P's, and 2 N's for 5 check marks. So that's how that works. So as you can see, I used other letters as well, but not the forbidden letter, which I believe was an O in that round. And since I used all 3 letters that were rolled on these blocks, I was able to then check mark the circle over here, which means that my score for that round, that word, would get doubled. So I had 5 check marks times 2 because I used all of the letters, giving me a total of 10 for that word. So as you are going from round to round, you need to fill up your sheet over here in alphabetical order, which can be a little bit difficult, but you can also use the same letter as long as the second word comes after this one. So for example, for one word I had jargon, but then my word directly underneath that is junk, because JA is before JU, so that worked fine. Otherwise I would have had only a K or an L to use, because the other letter here was an M, and these cannot be changed. So at the beginning of the game, those special letters, those, are stuck there, and you have to come up with words that start with those special letters, but your whole sheet needs to be in alphabetical order by the end of the game. So you're doing this for round after round, and if you are the first person to finish a word, then you're going to flip over the timer, which gives everyone else 40 seconds to finish writing down a word. And if they don't complete it, then they're not going to get any points for that round. And if you happen to use the forbidden letter in a certain round, then you're also not going to get to score the word that you just came up with. So you really want to come up with words that do not use the forbidden letter. So you're just continuing in that fashion, and then at the end of the game, whoever just has the most points will win. So yeah, so it's a really quick roll and write game in which you are just coming up with words and just trying to use as many of the letters as possible and multiple times if you can in order to get the most points. So yeah, so that is first class letter. So really easy to play, and I think that there is another kind of variant that you can play with this game as well, and I believe that there's also a solo mode in this game. There's like an easier variant called the breezy variant, and then there's a priority mail variant, which I don't know what that happens, what that does, but yeah. So yeah, so that was first class letters. So that's how that plays. And then let's go on to the last game which I received from them, which was Corgi Pileup, which is a trick-taking game. So in Corgi Pileup, you have these really cute cards with corgis on them. So Corgi Pileup is designed by Steve Ellis and Paul Solomon, and the art is done by Sai Bapu, and it is for 2 to 7 players. So it says, the cutie pie corgi pups just want to snuggle. So I'll just show you some of the artwork because the artwork is really adorable. So it's described as a trick-taking game, but there's actually just only one suit, which is just all these corgi cards in different numbers. So, I mean, I would say that this is just all one suit. Like, it's not like different suits. There's just a bunch of different corgis. And some of them may have special abilities on them. And then you have these scoring tokens, which are really adorable in different colors. And you have a scoreboard. But this game, it's played over a number of rounds. And at the end of each round, you're going to check your score. So you're going to play 5 tricks in each round. And then at the end of the last trick, you will score some points. And then you're going to keep on playing until someone hits or exceeds 15 points, and that's when the game would end, and then you would like check for final scoring. But you do not want to be the person to hit or exceed 15 points, because then your score marker goes down to 0. So basically, you're going to be dealt 5 cards after all of these get shuffled, and if you win the trick, then, you know, like in a typical trick-taking game, you'll start the next trick, but you want the last card you play in a round to be a low number, because that's what's going to be your score at the end of the round. So if the last card I ever played was a 2, then in a round, then that's going to be my score. So after it'll be the 5th trick, because you're going to do this like 5 times. And then if the last card was a 2, that's my score. And then you're going to move up your score marker up to the 2 over here. So there are just a couple of special cards with special abilities. So for example, number 6 has written on it, if wins. So if you win a trick with the 6, then you choose any player to discard a card and then draw one. Another special ability card is a 1. So it says final trick. So if you used a 1 on your final trick in a round, you can score 0 or any played card. And that doesn't make sense to me, because well, I guess it could make sense in a multiplayer game, because scoring 0 might be good because you don't want to exceed 15. But if you're not, the farthest one ahead, then you might want to score a higher number of points, because the person who busts by getting to 15, they're basically out of the running, but then it's the person who ends up with the highest score after the one player busts that will win. So that could be good. A 3, it says this trick, players must climb or play their highest card. So I think that those are the only special cards. or oh no, I don't know if I went over 10. So 10, it says the trick winner chooses an opponent to lead. So those are the special cards that you will be playing. But basically on your turn, when you're putting down a card, you either have to play, either have to climb, so you either have to play a card equal to or higher than the highest played card, or you play your lowest card. So those are your only two options. So again, you're going to play 5 tricks in a round, and the last card will determine your score for that round. And then when someone hits 15, so you're going to continue playing rounds until at least one score marker exceeds 15, and then that score marker returns to 0. And then you will see who has the most points, and then they will win. Yeah, it says you'll score the last trick though, as usual. And then it says, in the case of a tie, the tied player who played the lowest numbered card on the final trick wins. If there is still a tie, the tied card played earliest in the round is considered to be the lowest. So yeah, so that's the game. It's just kind of like a trick-taking game, but like with one suit in which you don't want to bust. So you want to win, but you don't want to be super far in the lead either, so that you're the player who busts. So yeah, so that is Corgi Pileup. So again, I only played this at a 2-player count, so it wasn't the best at 2 players. So I think that this kind of a game definitely needs to be played at a higher player count, and it's for 2 to 7 players. So I think you definitely want to have a minimum of 3 to really enjoy this. So I'll try playing this again at 3 or 4 or a higher player count, and then see how it is. But at 2, I probably would not recommend this game at 2 players. So yeah, so those were the 3 small box games that I received from Gamehead as review copies. So thank you to Gamehead for sending them to me, and let's move on. Another game I played recently, which I do not own, is Cursed Court. Now, this is a 2017 game for 2 to 6 players, designed by Andrew Hansen, and the art is done by Lee Moyer, and it's published by Atlas Games. Now, this is a bluffing game with area majority, and it's just an betting game, and I really enjoy this. So I played this game at a 6-player count, and on this game, each person has a certain number of chip tokens, and I believe each person has 20 chips and 4 different crowns. And so you're going to see a board that has these different kinds of people on them. So you'll see like a jester, you'll see like a king and a queen, and so on. And you'll see their positioning on this board. So at the beginning of a round, there's going to be a revealed card which shows which of those people has been revealed, and between each player, there's going to be a secret card which shows the identity of one of the people on the board. So basically, you are trying to bid on these different kinds of spaces in hopes that all of those by the end of the game will be revealed, and then you'll get points according to the number of cards that were revealed. So different positions around the board where you're trying to get your crown placed and hopefully not outbid, will represent what you think is going to show up. So for example, at the corner of a board, the corner means that you think that that corner spot plus the card, the person next to it and the person underneath it are revealed by the end of the game. And if they are, because 3 different characters comprise that spot that you bid on, you would get 3 points. If you bid on a spot and you won the bid on a spot that is between all 4 different characters, then if all 4 of those characters were revealed and you had your crown on that spot at the end of that day or phase or whatever it's called, then you would get 4 points. So I hope I'm explaining this well, but basically the different spots around the board represent the different configurations of the characters which you are bidding on and you are hoping will appear by the end of the game. So the first round, when everyone's going and placing their bids, there's going to be 1 revealed card for everyone to see. And then again, between you and each player on your side, there's a secret card which you and the player next to you know the identity of. So like, for example, in one round, I knew that in one row I had like the king and like this other character. So I just needed the one in the center to show up, and then I would know that, oh, the whole row is going to be there. But if you have like 2 out of 3, then you're hoping that the other one will show up so that you can bid on a configuration that has all 3 of those cards in it. So basically, yeah, you have limited information and you're bidding and bluffing with limited information. So sometimes you might bluff, like you might put down a certain number of bid tokens on a spot and show someone like, oh, like I think, you know, or this card is definitely here, so I'm gonna bid like 4 tokens. And then you might actually be hoping to get outbid because you're actually bluffing and you actually don't know if all of the cards that are indicated on the spot in which you bid are actually there. So yeah, so you're gonna go around in turn order and place down your bid tokens. If you get outbid, then you'll get to place your crown again. So each person again has 4 crowns, and the round, the day, will end once all 4 crowns have been placed. And the first player marker will be rotating, going around clockwise as the game progresses as well. But again, each person has 20 bid tokens. So in order to ensure that you don't get outbid on a spot, you can bid 11 tokens, because in order to outbid someone, you have to at least double their tokens. So if someone bid 2 on a spot, you have to bid 4 if you want to outbid them. And then the next person would have to bid at least 8 in order to outbid that person. And then the next person would have to bid 16 if they wanted to outbid that person. So early on in the game, like when I knew for sure that I had a really good place that I wanted to bid and secure, I went straight in and placed 11 tokens for my very first turn to make sure that no one could outbid me in that spot, because every player has only 20 bid tokens. And by putting down 11, I ensured that no one could outbid me because no one has 22 tokens to put down. But being outbid can sometimes be a good thing, because then you have your tokens returned to you. But, you know, as the game progresses, it's going to get harder and harder to outbid other players because the token stacks get taller and taller. But yeah, it's just a really fun bidding and bluffing game that I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really fun game, and I think it's, you know, a really fun game at a higher player count. Like I haven't played it at a low player count, so I can't say how it would be, but from asking my friends, they said that, you know, it's, you know, the scores are much lower because you're working with a lot less information in a lower player game, a lower player count game, because again, the only other information you have is with the cards that are between you and the other player. But at the end of each round, a new card does get revealed face up from the draw deck. So, you know, you do get some more revealed public information, but not much. By the end of a day, I think you have, how many revealed cards do you have? I think it's 4, or yeah, I think it's 4 revealed cards by the end of a day, because you have like 4 crowns, so 4 rounds. And then whatever is between all the players would get revealed as well at the end of the day. And then you would check and see who got how many points, and you're playing a total of 3 days, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's a game that I played recently and I really enjoyed it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, if you enjoy bluffing games and bidding games, then I think you would enjoy this, as well as deduction games, because there is deduction involved in this game as well. So yeah, so that was Cursed Quartz. So let's move on. So for new arrivals, I only have 1 game to show, and that is Ticket to Ride Refresh. So I actually don't own the original Ticket to Ride, so I actually can't tell what's different about this one, but here it is. So this is a review copy from Asmodee USA. So it's Ticket to Ride by Alan Moon, and it is for how many players? 2 to 5 players. So I don't know, one of my friends suggested that maybe the artwork is a bit new. So this is the artwork on the cover, and it does look a bit new from what I remember of what the original Ticket to Ride looks like. I suppose I could even just look it up right now and see what the original Ticket to Ride artwork looks like on the original, just like the basic Ticket to Ride, like not one of the other spaces. So yeah, so Ticket to Ride is originally a 2004 game, and yeah, the cover is definitely different. So the artwork definitely looks different. Okay, and then the inside, so this is the map. So I don't know if that looks different too, but here we go. So this is the map for this new Ticket to Ride. And then the back just has artwork on it. So yeah. And then it just has the insert with all the different player colors and cards. So again, I can't recall, but I don't know if these are like standard size, like maybe in the original, maybe they were smaller. I really don't know. So I honestly don't know, besides the artwork, like what would be different. But these are just all the different cards that you can see. So those look pretty much the same. And then the different player colors. This color is so pretty. It's like a really pretty like bluish color. And then you've got black, red, green, and yellow. So those are the different player colors. So yeah, I do not know if the rules are any different, but so this came in. So this was a review copy from Asmodee. So I'll play this. I actually don't own the actual basic Ticket to Ride. I only own a couple of the small ones, like Paris and London and Amsterdam, I think, if I remember correctly, or San Francisco, one of those, I can't remember. I own 3 of the small ones. I don't remember which 3 exactly, but I own 3 of the small ones, and then I own the Nordic country Ticket to Ride, and that's it. I only own the Nordic countries and then 3 small box ones, and now this one. So hopefully I'll get this played soon, but again, do not know, besides the artwork on the cover, what else is different from the original. And then in terms of games I'm backing, I think I am backing something actually. I'm backing this one game from Roxley Games. I believe it's Roxley. Let me pull it up if I can find my board game stuff. Yeah. So I'm backing... Where is it? Okay, I guess my internet sucks here. But I know I'm backing this like new game, oh yeah, called Excalibur. So this has like 12 days left. So Excalibur, Claim the Crown or Cry Trying. So yeah, so this is from Roxley Games, and it's basically like kind of like a bluffing social deduction game for 2 to 8 players. So that looks really good. So I thought I would check that out. It's been a long time since the current gaming group I have, I feel like they're not as much into kind of like social deduction and bluffing kinds of games and stuff like that. But I would really like to play this with like a big group of people. It seems like it would be a lot of fun. So I'm currently backing that, and that has about 12 days to go, and they've raised over $250,000 so far. So those are the games I'm backing and my new arrival. So let's move on. So before we go on to book club, I just want to give a cat update. So I had a friend help me put down some new pallets at colony number 1, which, as you guys know, is kind of like in a ditch with water underneath. And so we were able to raise the like levels of the pallets and everything by adding a lot more pallets and making it a lot more level. And the new pallets that I added there are really nice, and the cats really love them. Like, they do have a little bit of a slit between each like board in the pallet, just enough to like let water get through and stuff like that, but not these huge gaps that would make it uncomfortable for the cats. And so now the shelters are able to stay on these pallets much more easily. Like, I'm able to place all of the shelters on the pallets without having to use like the hill and try to like wedge in rocks underneath the feet of the shelter to try to keep them balanced and all of that. Like, I was doing all of that with one of the shelters before in colony number 1. So now it is so much nicer, and it's much more raised, so there's no like threat of the cats' shelters being flooded or anything like that. They have a lot more space to just relax and lounge. It's really, really nice. So I'm really grateful to my friend who helped me, first collect these shelters, these pallets, and then put down these pallets at the colony. So it was a lot of hard work, but it got done, so I'm really happy about that, and I'm very pleased with the end result. And I also collected a really big, nice pallet that I want to create a covered feeding station out of for colony number 2, because colony number 2, where I placed the wet food plates, that pallet has no cover, so it's not protected from the elements, and so in the wintertime it's not protected from snow, and of course it's not protected from rain. So I collected a really nice pallet, and I want to try to like add like a cover to it of some kind, and then put that at colony number 2 so that the wet food will always stay protected from the elements at that colony. So yeah, so I'm hopefully gonna do like kind of like a little construction project this summer to try to see what I can come up with for colony number 2. So that is just a quick little update on the cat colonies. So let's move on. So for Fiction Book Club, we are reading Legends and Lattes, and for today we were supposed to read chapters 16, 17, 18, and 19. And finally, I feel like we're actually getting somewhere with a plot, so I'm really happy about that. We're like learning more about the stone, and we learned like who the madrigal is and all of that's good stuff, so getting excited about all of that. So yeah, I mean, I don't have much to comment other than that I still like the cat. And, you know, it's cool that they're adding more and more items to the menu as, you know, the book progresses. So now you see iced, you know, drinks, which is pretty cool. So I like how they are, you know, at one point in one of these chapters, they mentioned, Viv mentions that she would like a way for people to be able to take drinks with them. So I think at some point in one of the upcoming chapters, we're gonna see to-go cups, like the invention of to-go cups in this book. Like I'm pretty sure that's gonna happen because we've already got now iced lattes, and pretty sure we're gonna see to-go cups and stuff coming up. So that's pretty fun. Otherwise, I don't have much to comment on really. Same old, same old. So yeah, I mean, it seems like the madrigal ended up not being as terrible a person or creature as, you know, we all thought that they might be, I guess, you know, because they're willing to accept food in terms of payment. So that's nice, I guess. Yeah, so I guess we'll just find out whether, you know, they get their hands on the Scalavert stone and what happens with that. So for next time, let's read chapters 20, 21, 22, and 23. So again, yeah, this is going by pretty quickly, so we'll be done with it soon enough. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any predictions about what's going to happen. So far the only prediction I have is that we're going to see to-go cups in the next few chapters, but let me know your predictions in the comments below. And yeah, so let's move on. So for our non-fiction book club, we are now reading Genocide Bad, which is Notes on Palestine, Jewish History, and Collective Liberation by Sim Kern. And for today, we were supposed to read up until page, the end of page 49. So we were supposed to read chapter 1, I believe, unless that was last time, I can't remember. But we read, Who Are You to Speak on Israel? And then the next chapter in this section called Answering Hasbara is Marginalized Human Shields. And then the third chapter is But Israel is So Diverse. And I think that brings us to the end. Yeah, so the Who Are You to Speak on Israel part was really interesting because the author talks about what deference politics is and all of that, which I thought was really interesting. So, you know, so they talk about what kinds of retorts they would get when they would speak up for Palestine in other Jewish communities. So, you know, they would be like, oh, you're not Jewish enough. Oh, you're an anti-Zionist Jew, so you don't have a right to talk about this, etc., etc. So they wrote in this book, when Zionists question your credentials to speak out on genocide, they are expecting you to play by the rules of deference politics. So, so they basically say that understanding the mechanisms of deference politics and why we should embrace a constructive politic instead will prevent you from getting derailed by questions like, who are you to speak on this? Yeah. So let me just, so we can go into some definitions. I really like how they always have definitions like at the bottom of each page, like if they refer to something, like that's really nice. So yeah, they went over a lot of concepts which I was never able to kind of like articulate or even know the names of, like for example, elite capture. So they said that elite capture is the process by which elites invariably hijack the political projects of the masses, twist them and weaponize them to serve elite interests. And we see that happening all the time, all around the world. So just really interesting. And it's really nice to see all these things with their proper terms, because I actually didn't know a lot of these terms before. So yeah, and then, they talk about identity politics and where that term came from. And I thought the history of that was really interesting. Like I didn't know where the history of the term identity politics even came from. So learning about that history was just really interesting. So, it was coined by Black feminist lesbians of the Combahee River Collective in the 1970s. And it says, to them, identity politics was about asserting their right to pursue, quote, a political agenda based in their full experiences and interests rather than positioning them as white women's tokens or as Black men's secretaries, and one that incorporated the full complexity of their values rather than a degraded and misshapen caricature of them, unquote. Really interesting. Like just learning the history about that was really, really interesting. Yeah, so, and then the author mentions how it's the perversion of identity politics, and that's what this other author called Taiwo calls deference politics. So it says, when we're told we're not allowed to be anti-genocide because some of the people doing the genocide have historically been marginalized, that's deference politics. So, and then it talks about a major failed strategy of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign was to bank on her gender and Black and South Asian identities as credentials that must be deferred to in order to silence dissent on Palestine. So the author mentions how at one of the campaigns, Kamala shut down protesters when she said, "I'm speaking," because she was banking on her identity to shut down protests. And obviously that was a failed, using her identity as a Black and South Asian woman, was a failed attempt at winning the election, obviously, because protesters were just not being heard. Anti-genocide people during the election were just not being heard. So just a really interesting chapter talking about deference politics and what all of that is, and then how we should be having a constructive political culture, which would focus on outcome over process, the pursuit of specific goals or end results rather than avoiding complicity in injustice or promoting purely moral or aesthetic principles. Yeah, interesting. So again, the author talks about what the kinds of responses they would get when speaking out against Zionism. So if you're not Jewish, then the Zionists will tell you to shut up and defer to Jews because of the supposedly incomparable marginalizations we experienced during the Holocaust. But if you are Jewish, like the author, then Zionists will tell you to shut up and defer to the right Jews, to Israelis. If you're an anti-Zionist Israeli Jew, they'll produce some Jew who has even one more marginalization token than you do. Maybe they have darker skin, or they're queer, or more disabled than you, and they'll tell you to shut up and defer to that Zionist. So that is deference politics, basically. So, so they keep on, they talk a lot about deference politics and how it plays out when advocating for Palestinians. And then they talk about how it even happens within the left community and within the pro-Palestinian community itself. And then they talked about how they tried to organize an event with other anti-Zionist Jews, which was based around one of their Jewish holidays, and how, they got a lot of comments and stuff about that, and criticisms about some of the people who were going to partake in that event and so on. So it can happen even within liberal, within the pro-Palestinian communities too, where you can see deference politics happening apparently. So I like that they, in the book they say, for every one of the sock puppet accounts and so on, there's a bunch more well-intentioned leftists who do the same work of empire, eating the left from within because they're naive or ego-driven or misguided or simply too exhausted to learn new ways of relating. And, they say that we are all capable of perpetuating bigotry. Yeah, so that was an interesting chapter, learning about deference politics, which I didn't, I knew what it was, but I never knew the term for it. So it's really good to learn the actual term that what that is. And then in chapter 2, marginalized human shields. So this is the one that kind of addresses how Zionism is the only democracy in the Middle East and blah, blah, blah. So this is about, so it says, using marginalized Israelis to justify committing war crimes against Palestinians is a specific kind of deference politics that the author calls using marginalized human shields. Yeah. And they wrote that using human shields is recognized as a war crime even by the US military. One of the notes that they have at the bottom of page 35 is that mainstream Israeli media almost always uses the term Arabs rather than Palestinians in their reporting. This rhetoric has the effect of erasing Palestinians' unique identity and their titles to the land, which is 100% true. Like, I've seen that as well, where they're referred to as Arabs and not Palestinians. And it, it's trying to make it seem like all Arabs are the same, that the Arabs are like this one monolithic group, which is 100% not true. Like, Arabs in different countries and within the same country can be quite different and have different cultures and customs, and speak different Arabic dialects and so on. So Arabs definitely are not one monolithic group, but they are many different types of Arabs, and they should be referred to as Palestinians when we are talking about Palestinian Arabs. This author gives many examples of Israel doing things. So for example, so it says, after bombing over 200 schools and dozens of hospitals over the past year, Israel has yet to produce convincing proof of Hamas strongholds in those locations. Yet, interestingly enough, on Instagram just yesterday, I think it was, I saw that Israel actually has a military base located underneath a hospital in Israel. So they are in fact using human shields. And we've seen examples of Israel using human shields throughout the last 2 years since the genocide began. Like, I've seen examples of them using Palestinians and strapping them to cars, or not cars, like the big military vehicles, whatever those are called, tanks and so on. So, the author gives a whole bunch of examples here of how Israel is the one that actually uses human shields, and how you can, they're basically giving you information that, you can use to when people say to you, oh, well, Palestinians use human shields, well, they're just giving you so many examples of when actually Israel is the one that uses human shields. And they use the same phrase in this book that I have said many times before in my videos, that every accusation is a confession. Like, every time Israel accuses Palestinians of doing something, it's actually a confession, because they themselves are actually doing it. It says, Zionists position themselves as an anti-hate authority while actually inciting hatred of Arab, Muslims, and Palestinian people. That is very true. And then, the author talks about how they're always like, the Zionists are always like, oh, look at our black soldiers, look at our gay soldiers, look at this, look at that. So they're trying to use the marginalized communities that they've been using in order to, justify their hate of Arabs and Muslims and so on. So the author talks about pink washing, which is something that I've talked about as well, which is, using queer people as a means to try to justify the genocide. And the author goes over the 4 pillars of Israeli pink washing. 1, the notion that genocide is okay if the people being genocided or their leaders are anti-queer. 2, the claim that Palestinians make a habit of killing queer people. 3, the claim that Israel is a haven for queer rights. And 4, the erasure of queer Palestinians and their human rights. So I like how this author goes through these 4 different pillars and, shows how no matter what, genocide is wrong, and you can't try to claim that Israel is the safe haven for queer people, which actually is not entirely true based on the information that the author has provided. So the author talks about how the Zionists always use this one example of this Palestinian being beheaded in the West Bank, and how they claim that Palestinians are homophobic and would kill you if you're gay in Palestine. So for that reason, it's fine to commit a genocide. And then the author says that this murder was actually not carried out by Hamas, because of course it was in the West Bank, and the West Bank has no Hamas. And it's so that would be the Western-backed Palestinian Authority, but there was also zero evidence to link the Palestinian Authority to this murder. So it was actually kind of like an isolated incident, and they never never found who did it, so you don't even know for sure that it was a hate crime, though it very well could have been. And then the author says that such hate crimes anyway occur in Israel too. So then they give an example of a hate crime against a gay girl in 2015 in Israel. And then it says, in the West Bank, under the Palestinian Authority, homosexuality has been decriminalized since 1951. So in the West Bank, homosexuality is not even a crime. And then it says in Gaza, it's not been decriminalized, but the criminalization began with the British Mandate. So homosexuality was first criminalized in Palestine under the British Mandate Criminal Code Ordinance of 1936. And so Hamas has merely failed to decriminalize it. So again, just making it seem like only Arabs and only Palestinians and only Muslims are homophobic, which is not true. Yeah. And again, I've said this so many times on my channel, like, the beliefs of one person, one Muslim who maybe thinks that all gays should be killed, does not represent the beliefs of all Muslims. Likewise, the beliefs of Hamas do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the majority of Gazans. So yeah, so I like all the points that they go through talking about this in terms of pinkwashing. And then they talk about their own experiences and how the vast majority of anti-queer hate that they received online comes from Zionists. And then they say an apartheid state can never be a haven of LGBTQ plus rights because any queer people suffering under their apartheid system will be met with violence. And then it says, Netanyahu came to power in the last election by embracing the support of openly anti-queer and racist Likud party members, and that Israel has actually not legalized same-sex marriage. So some really interesting facts here to fight against pinkwashing. And then it talks about the few Palestinians who have moved to Israel to seek asylum. And it says, but because they were Palestinian, they were denied the protections of other asylum seekers. And then they give an example talking about this one person who moved into Israel. And they said that this queer person who's a Muslim Palestinian, he said, I would have rather died in the West Bank than live here like this. Because again, they are facing a lot of discrimination being a Muslim Palestinian living in Israel in this apartheid state. So yeah, so these pinkwashing tactics that pinkwashers use, just completely ridiculous. Yeah. And it says here, prior to October 7th, these queer Gazavis were not being massacred by Hamas, but they're sure as shit being massacred by Israel now. So I really like this sentence because like all these people are like, oh, well, you would be killed if you were in Gaza if you're a queer person. Well, then show us how many queer people were killed in Gaza before October 7th and how many queer people in Gaza have been killed since October 7th from all the Israeli bombs that have been dropping on them. So yes, so they are in fact being killed by Israel, and Israel is not protecting these queer people in Gaza. Yeah. And of course, the author says, we can't be dissuaded from criticizing war crimes just because they're committed by Black, Jewish soldiers or queer female politicians. True. And then chapter 3, but Israel is so diverse. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, they give an example of deference politics that were at play, and then the author wrote, because I am white, my argument that Israel is a white supremacist society can be discarded as long as a Black Zionist is willing to contradict me. It's not the argument or ideas that matter, but the identity of whoever happens to be speaking. So basically, they had a video, and I remember seeing this video when it was released on TikTok, talking about how Israelis get to be white and Palestinians are brown in the situation when you talk about Israel and Palestine. And then they wrote that Zionists demonstrated an incredibly superficial understanding of identity politics. They've mistaken colorism for racism. So colorism is a discrimination based solely on the darkness of your skin color. Racism is a social, economic, and legal construct that sorts people into categories of more and less human in order to justify the exploitation and oppression of racialized groups. So in a white supremacist society, certain types of people get to be white, and those people are afforded more wealth, privilege, and civil and human rights than those who are non-white. So some really important points to distinguish between colorism and racism, especially when you are thinking about Israel and Palestine and the people who live in Israel, and whether everyone in Israel is white and who is white. They talk about why it is that white poor people in the US vote against their own interests, and it's because of racism. So like when you see these white poor people voting for Trump, and you know that Trump is actually not going to make their lives better, why are they doing it? Because of racism. So some really interesting history here, which I thought was just very good to know, and I wish more Americans would educate themselves on the history of how different types of things emerged. So it says the 16th century was the beginning of what scholars term the early modern period, which saw the end of medieval feudalism and the emergence of racial capitalism. So So racism divided the laboring classes into white and non-white groups. The white group, those in the religious or ethnic majority, now saw themselves as more allied with the nobles who were robbing them of their wealth than they were with their fellow non-white workers. Like, just insane. So it's like all of these things which kind of pit people against each other and rely on people to just be stupid and not educated about these topics, so that capitalism and the rich can get richer, and the capitalism can thrive, and people don't stand up for their rights. In the 1500s, Great Britain recolonized Ireland, and the entire island served as an Irish ghetto. Britain screwed up Ireland as well. Like, they fucked over Ireland, which is why the Irish are, pro-Palestinian. So it says, were these ghettoized Jews in early modern Europe non-white? Absolutely. So Jews experienced structural racism because they were confined to a ghetto. So in early modern Europe, Jews were considered non-white. But now when you look at Israel, that's not the case, because in Israel, they are the ones who are of the ruling majority and are afforded all the privileges of the ruling class. It says, colorism has trumped anti-Jewish hate, and pale Jews of European ancestry have been folded into white supremacy. So in Israel, of 7 million Israelis, only 25 to 30% are Ashkenazi Jews with European ancestry. Then another 35 to 40% are Mizrahi Jews, Jews from Arab countries such as Iraq, Yemen, or Morocco. 2.2% are Black Ethiopian Jews, and 20% are Palestinian citizens of Israel. And then they talk about how such a country can still be racist. So it says white people don't have to be in the majority for a country to be a white supremacist, If there's one category of people that's white and they're at the top of the economic and political ladder, then that country is white supremacist. In Israel, whiteness is claimed by Ashkenazi Jews. And then they talk about the huge income and education gap between white Ashkenazi Jews and non-white Mizrahi Jews. And then they talk about how Ethiopian Jews, like the migrants to Israel, were routinely sterilized without their knowledge, cutting their birth rate in half compared to the general population. Very interesting. That's something that I knew about before as well. So anytime, Israel, Zionists are trying to tell you that, Israel is like a democracy and everyone's treated fairly and it's just, perfect, this perfect land in the Middle East, like, you can just throw all these facts in their face. So it says Amnesty International has found Palestinians experience massive seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians, all components of a system which amount to apartheid under international law. Yeah. It says, Ashkenazi Jews in 17th century Europe were not white, but Ashkenazi Jews in Israel today are the definition of white. Yeah, so Israelis are humanized by Western media coverage, whereas Palestinians are dehumanized. And we've seen this time and time again, and I've even talked about this before. Like, Israeli deaths were mentioned at a rate that's much higher than that of Palestinians, 16 times higher. Journalists use highly emotive words and employ the active voice to describe the slaughter and massacre of Israelis, while they more often use the passive voice to describe Palestinians dying. Like over 100,000 Palestinians have just died. Like, how did they die? And then it says Israeli children and Palestinian minors being used in the same article. Like, when that Palestinian girl was, had God knows how many bullets, I think it was like hundreds and hundreds of bullets that were shot at her in that vehicle, Hind, they referred to her as a young woman. And if I remember correctly, she was like 5 or 6 years old. So in this case, they're not even referring to her as a minor. They refer to her as a young woman in Western news outlets. Like, that is how messed up the media is and how much it wants to dehumanize Palestinians and make it so that you have no sympathy for them. The way they end this chapter, I really like. It says, in the eyes of the Western world, the only thing Palestinians are allowed to do is die silently. And that's fucking racist, 100%. So I'm just really learning so much. I feel like I'm learning a lot of history about, identity and how even to, explain these concepts and understand these concepts, which will be which once you understand these concepts of identity politics and difference politics and all of that, then you can use what you've learned to explain to Zionists what they're doing is wrong and why their arguments fail. So it's very, very helpful to have all of this in this book. I really appreciate it. So let me know what you think and what you learned, if what you're thinking so far of this book. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a really great read, and I'm really glad that we're reading it. So for next time, let's read up to page, let's see what we should read. Oh, that might be too much actually. So let me find where this chapter ends. All right, let's for next time read up to the end of page 74. So we'll read 4 and 5. So chapters 4 and 5, which is But the Holocaust and Bogus History. So read from pages 51 to 74 for next time. And let me know in the comments below what you think so far and what you found the most interesting and whether you've been learning anything new from this. So I hope that you are enjoying this book as much as I am. So thank you. So let's move on. So I'm going to try to keep this week's rant of the week relatively short, but basically, in case you guys haven't noticed, Israel attacked Iran unprovoked, and then Iran retaliated by sending missiles into Israel. And those missiles have caused some damage, but have not caused mass casualties. Over 100 people have been killed in Iran so far, and I believe the death total in Israel from Iranian missiles is like 3 people. So definitely not mass casualties. This is not a mass casualty event. However, when Israel started bombing Iran preemptively to try to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, they are the ones who actually started this. Iran is the one who is defending itself. And now what do we see on social media? We see a bunch of really stupid people, stupid Americans, and people from other parts of the world as well. It's not just Americans who are stupid, who of course think that Iran is the one that needs to be eliminated. Iran is the aggressor here. Iran is the one that was defending itself from these bombs. And mind you, while this was going on, when Israel started bombing Iran, Gaza was in a total blackout. And as far as I know, is still in a total blackout. Like, communications were completely cut. And you know that when Israel has a total blackout on Gaza, where they cannot even access, social media, where they cannot get on to share photos and videos with the world, that the worst atrocities are happening. And we've seen, again and again, that Israel is in its final solution phase. So as it's bombing Iran, Gaza is in a total blackout, and these horrible atrocities, which we cannot even imagine, are still occurring. So on Facebook, I made a post about it, and I wrote, so I just want to share what I wrote, and, and then the kind of results of what happened. So do I have Facebook here? Let me see. So on Facebook, I wrote, suddenly every dumb American in the USA is an expert on the Middle East and Iran. You clearly haven't been paying attention if you think Israel is the victim. And, a number of people liked this post and responded and understood, and that was just really great. And it's really nice that there are people who actually do understand that Israel is the aggressor. Israel is not the victim, has never been the victim, and they understand that Iran is defending itself. But then you have stupid people like this person, and so we were friends on Facebook, but then he blocked me. But before he blocked me, I took a bunch of screenshots because this guy is completely stupid. So the only reason I'm going to out him here is because he is supposedly a board game designer / publisher. I've never heard of his games, but in case people have, I think it's important to, note what this person is saying and what they believe. So this is obviously a Trump supporter, but he wrote, I can't remember because I actually don't think I have a screenshot of what he exactly said, but it was something like, oh, so the people are the pro-Palestinians now rooting for Iran or something like that. And then I wrote a comment calling him stupid. Basically, I was like, are you really this fucking stupid? And then I said, Israel bombed Iran unprovoked and killed civilians. Iran has a right to defend itself. Isn't that what you Israel supporters said? Israel has a right to defend itself. And then it devolved into this big conversation. Yes, should I have said to him, are you really this fucking stupid? Probably not. That's probably not the best way to start a conversation. But at this point, I was just really angry because, I've been seeing this kind of shit for almost 2 years now. And now that Iran is involved, it's a lot more personal to me. So I was really angry. So at one point he starts asking me, he starts saying things about how Iran, he says, since you have family that lives there, I would love to know what you believe Israel was trying to accomplish with those strikes. Were they simply trying to kill civilians, or was there something else more at stake? And please answer without saying anything about, I hate Trump, I hate Israel. So he wanted me to respond without bringing Trump or Israel into it, yet wants to know what Israel was trying to accomplish. Okay, that makes no fucking sense, but okay. So then I explained to him how, that I explained that Netanyahu was trying to prolong his his political career, which we know 100% he's been trying to do. We know that this was also a distraction from what's happening in Gaza, because it really is. Because since Israel started bombing Iran, what do the headlines in the newspapers say? Iran strikes Israel, Iran attacking Israel. All the attention has been put on that and has been taken away from the genocide, which is still ongoing during this blackout. So I explained that to him. And then I explained how in its history, Iran has never attacked another of its neighbor countries in the Middle East or anywhere else unprovoked. It's only attacked when attacked first, as it did in this situation. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Israel has up to 400. Iran does allow inspectors to come in and inspect. Israel does not. So Iran submits to inspections. Israel does not. So and Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel did not. So despite listing out all these facts for him, he didn't care. And then he says to me, let's see, what does he say next? And then he says, let me see if I can find it. Because then he made some comment about whether I support what the Iranian government is like and what they're doing, which is irrelevant to Israel bombing Iran. So then he says his retort to all of that, me explaining how Israel is actually the threat with the nuclear weapons, hasn't signed the non-proliferation treaty, etc., doesn't submit to inspections, his response is, do you feel like the current Iranian regime is what should remain, or would you like to see the country go back to what it was in the 70s? I remember when the people there were free, or at least much freer than they are now. I'm assuming you're young enough not to remember how it was back then, so this current thinking may be all you know, but I could be wrong. I'm seriously curious about your thoughts on that. So then I wrote back to him, it's not for you or the American or Israeli people to decide whether or not there should be a regime change and or when in Iran. In case you have memory loss, the USA and Britain fucked up Iran by reinstating the Shah after overthrowing a democratically elected leader. So stay the fuck out of Iran. What a fucking imperialist mindset Americans have, thinking that every country is theirs to do with as they wish. Maybe worry about ICE rounding up immigrants in the USA and even citizens for criticizing Israel before you even think about other countries. For fuck's sake, I am for regime change in Iran by and for the Iranian people, not fucking Israelis and Americans. Stay the fuck out of Iran. And then to this, he responded that, I see that I can't even have a rational discussion with you. So he ignores all the points I make and then retorts to saying that he can't have a rational discussion with me. So so he said, okay, you've proven to me that you're someone I can't even have a rational conversation with. I wanted to know how an Iranian with family in the country viewed the situation for its people. Instead of having a sensible discussion, you went into another rant. Of course he's going to say that because he has nothing to respond to. Did he have any response to the coup that the USA and the British had in Iran, where they overthrew a democratically elected leader? No, had nothing to say to that, obviously. It's America and Britain that fucked up Iran and caused all of this to happen. Like, one event leads to another. When you reinstate a Shah who then doesn't care about its people, that is what gave rise to the current government that we have in Iran now. And then I responded to him, and then eventually he blocked me, but I responded to him before he blocked me. And I said, because your comment showed me, just as your original posted, that as an American, you think you know better, though you have no connection whatsoever to the region. Hence the rant. For almost 2 years, people like me have had to endure ignorant Americans who think they're experts on everything when they are so clearly not. Your original post shows that you support Israel, a state committing a genocide. And now you're asking what the people of Iran want, as though that justifies bombing a nation that didn't attack anyone. Typical imperial mindset. So, and he doesn't even care what the people of Iran want, because if he did, he would know that they don't want to be bombed by Israel and they want to be responsible for their own regime change. That is what the majority of Iranians want. The majority of Iranians do not want to be bombed, they don't want to be killed, and they don't want outsiders again coming in and fucking up their country. And then I said to him, you won't even acknowledge the atrocities that Israel commits, yet you expect someone from a country that Israel bombed unprovoked to have a discussion with you. And then he blocked me, and so I couldn't see anything further or respond. But in another thread, he posted, in another thread underneath the same original post of his, someone commented, I'm just looking for answers, also my wonderful friend. And then he responds, I have no answers. However, I'm all for taking out Iran's nuclear weapons program. And then I responded to him, and this is after I already explained to him that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, that they signed the non-proliferation treaty, that they allow inspections, they allow people to come in and inspect their facilities. So he already knew all of that when he wrote this comment, because I had already told him all of this. And then so I responded to him saying, wow, you really are stupid. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel has up to 400. You've proved my point exactly about just how fucking stupid you truly are. And then I think that's when he blocked me. And so maybe, my language wasn't the best. Maybe I should have tried to approach it from another way. But then going through his profile, before he blocked me, I could see that he's not someone who actually cares about educating himself anyway, and I think he represents a vast majority of the American population. And I think when people in other countries think of Americans being stupid, this is the kind of person that represents America to them. This is the kind of person that they see as being the typical American who is uneducated, unwilling to read books, even after I suggested titles to him. In one of my comments, I listed a bunch of books that I think that, you know, people like him should read, but do you think that they're ever going to bother to pick up a book, even a book written by a Palestinian or an Iranian or anyone else, or even not one of those things, like maybe a book by Noam Chomsky or Norman Finkelstein? Do you think he's going to ever pick up a book by them? No, he's never going to do that. He's just going to stay ignorant and be content with his ignorance and not understand how his ignorance doesn't benefit him either. It just keeps him being the stupid person that supports this capitalist society and helps the oligarchs stay in power where he does not benefit. Like, he is not some wealthy American who is benefiting from this capitalist society and the oligarchy that is currently in power. So yeah, so I just cannot deal with these stupid Americans. But anyway, after I made that post about how Americans are dumb and, you know, they're now all of a sudden going to be experts on Iran and the Middle East, Tom Vassell unfriended me on Facebook. So I have a third-party app which shows me when someone unfriends me. And so it was after that post yesterday that Tom Vassell unfriended me. So, you know, is Tom Vassell a Zionist? I don't know. But I will say this. So he was a pastor. I don't know if he still, you know, works as a pastor in some capacity or not, but he was a pastor. So he clearly is a devout Christian. He's, you know, lives in Florida, obviously probably influenced by other Floridians. And as we've learned from the books we've read, a lot of Christians are Zionists. If, like, you know, the hardcore Christians support Zionism. So why did he unfriend me? I don't know. I don't know if it's because, like, you know, I called Americans dumb, or because I said that Israel is not a victim, or for some other reason. Like, I have no way of knowing why Tom Vassell unfriended me on Facebook. But, you know, I can't help but look at what his identity is and wonder if that has something to do with it and whether or not he is a Zionist and supports Israel. Like, of course, he's never come out and condemned the genocide like so many others in the industry. So, you know, being on the right side of history is a lonely place to be, especially in the freaking board game industry where people are still silent. Even as Israel, this terrorist nation, started bombing yet another country, everyone remained silent. Like, it's just insane. Like, and they refuse to see the connection between what's happening in America with what's happening in Palestine. Like, they just cannot see the connection, even though the connection is there. And I just don't know how you're supposed to educate these uneducated masses that think that they know what's best and think that they're actually fighting for a better country when they are completely ignoring something so important today. Like, it's just really mind-boggling. Like, I just cannot comprehend the amount of stupid people in this industry. Like, I truly cannot. Yeah, I really feel like I'm just running out of ideas, and I just, you know, I just think that we're just doomed because there just are so many stupid people who just don't care. And I don't see that ever changing. Like, I really don't. Like, if any of you have suggestions, like, please share those suggestions with me, because I don't know what we're supposed to do at this point. Like, I'm just trying to do my best in educating people around me and hoping that they'll then learn and educate people around them, and that's how word will spread and people will hopefully want to revolt against all the tyranny we see. But I don't know, like, the board game industry is just filled with really dumb liberals still. You know, I won't even address the people on the right, but the liberals who are just really dumb and cannot see the connection between Palestine and what's happening in this country. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't even know what to say to that anymore. So yeah, so this is where we are today, and that is my rant of the week, I guess. So let's move on. So this week's question of the week is inspired by Cursed Court, and I want to know, what is your favorite bluffing and bidding game? So it should have both elements in it, and the game that I played as well, called Venture Angels, also kind of had an element of bluffing in it, because you might have put down a 0 bid token underneath a certain venture which you were bidding on to show that others that you were interested in it, but they didn't know that it was a 0. So yeah, so please let me know, what are some of your favorite bluffing and bidding games? So they should have both of them in it, and leave your answers in the comments below, and until next time, bye.